Hello guys, thank you so much for coming back to watch another video on this channel. We'll be talking about why I think DC will be running superhero genre for the next couple of years. Let's find out together. So before we start talking about the new DCEU, which is going to be running by James Gunn and Peter Safran, let's rewind back and find out what happened with DC, where DC started and where DC is heading in the next couple of years. So the DCEU films actually started from Zack Snyder's first film, Man of Steel. Man of Steel is one of my favorite DC movies and one of my favorite Superman movies ever. With Man of Steel, we got a new kind of Superman which we haven't seen before on a live action screen. This is no longer your Superman from Christopher Reeve's movies where Superman is wearing underwear outside his pants. So long gone Boy Scout Superman, which we all knew from the comics or from the Christopher Reeve's movies, we got introduced to a new jaded and more gritty Superman, which we haven't seen before. Now even if you hate Zack Snyder, one thing you would love Zack Snyder for, that's his visuals. My god, I've never seen Metropolis get destroyed in any film before, just like it did in Man of Steel. This Superman wasn't playing around. He'll smack you all over if you're talking shit about his mother. My mother! The action, the music in that film, everything, it's still one of my favorite comic book movies ever. However, saying that movie wasn't a really good start for a DCEU. The movie got panned by critics and even some fans were divided on this new Superman. Now at that point, John Berg and Jeff Johns was running the DCEU as heads, so they allowed Zack Snyder to make another movie. Then Zack Snyder announced he's going to introduce a new Batman into the Superman universe, hence it started DCEU. Now we know the quality, we're not going to go in detail to talk about all the films made by Zack Snyder because I know some people hate them, some people love them. I personally enjoy the movies, but I can see why people would hate it because it was dark and gloomy, which wasn't supposed to be the characters in DCEU. Now DCEU didn't start it with a great plan, and they just started, they wanted to compete against Marvel. Now at that point I remember they introduced their own 10-year plan where they're going to have all the major characters, they're going to have their individual films. Now on the paper this plan looks really good, really promising, but the problem was there was no one to guide this new DC moving forward. Now Warner Brothers wasn't making as much money which they were supposed to be making with these flagship characters like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. So during that time there was a lot of controversies going around Warner Brothers with actors, with the movies. So around that time, in early 2018, they introduced Walter Hamada, who worked on New Line Cinema, to take over the new DCEU. He worked on a lot of the horror genre movies. DCEU was running and doing its own thing, and the problem with Walter Hamada was that he wanted to do a DCEU where he would allow the creatives to make the movies they wanted to create, but they don't have the continuity moving forward. Stories weren't going to be joined together. They were going to be their own thing in their own universes under the label of DC.
And we're trying to keep it as simple as that. Like there is that one Earth, the greater Earth of sort of this existing Justice League, and then the beginnings of another Earth that is sort of happening, that's early stages of Year 2 Batman. And then obviously there are outliers like Joker, which it doesn't exist in either Earth. But that's okay, it's all part of the multiverse.
Around the same year in 2018, James Gunn actually got fired from Marvel over some controversial tweets which he did back in 2008 up until 2012. Around that time, Warner Brothers had a discussion with James Gunn and they gave him the opportunity to direct a DC movie for Warner Brothers. They gave him all the characters, but as James Gunn, he loved to do the odd characters, so he decided to do his own Suicide Squad. And officially in October 2018, it was announced that James Gunn is going to be directing Suicide Squad new movie for Warner Brothers. In April 2022, AT&T, who owned Warner Brothers at that point, they closed a transaction with Discovery, and Discovery decided to merge Warner Media with Discovery and named it Warner Bros. Discovery. And they put a new CEO for the company to oversee Warner Bros. Discovery called David Zaslav. David Zaslav decided to axe Batgirl, which was in pre-production at that point, I think. And Walter Hamada, who was actually pushing for Batgirl movie, he didn't like that, and he decided to exit Warner Brothers around October 2022. His contract was supposed to run out in January 2023, but he wanted to leave DC or Warner Brothers at that point. So he was looking for another replacement who would connect all this DC and make it interesting for people out there. So around that time he approached Dan Lin, who worked on Lego movies, and he made quite successful movies for Warner Brothers. However, he wasn't interested to be the head of DC. There was discussions going behind the curtains in Warner Brothers. There were two people who were looking to be the next Kevin Feige for DC. It was James Gunn, and on the other hand, it was The Rock. The Rock was actually trying to promote his film, but at the same time he was trying to say the new hierarchy of DC is going to change, kind of trying to show that he's going to be the next big Kevin Feige for DC.
Now what you're going to see here is why the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
The power in the DC universe is about to change. Things will never be the same, because the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
However, David Zaslav had a different plan. Now around that time they were waiting on the success of Black Adam, which wasn't a successful film for Warner Brothers.
Hierarchy of power in the DC universe. Hierarchy of power. Hierarchy of power. Hierarchy of power.
So in the same month, in October 2022, they decided that DC is going to be run by two people, not one, and these two co-heads would be James Gunn and Peter Safran. Now that was a really smart move from Warner Brothers, because I'll give you the reason as to why. James Gunn is very creative, he's very talented, he can do really good comic movies. However, David Zaslav put a business guy right next to James Gunn, who has been very successful for Warner Brothers. Peter Safran actually worked on many horror movies for Warner Brothers, and they actually turned out to be very successful. So the point was to make sure that James Gunn does what he wants, but at the same time he wants to make sure that movie is successful, and Peter Safran knows how to do that. Now since then, James Gunn has been very vocal on his Twitter account. He's been telling fans what he's been working on, what he'll be working on moving forward. However, he's been very brave, and he said, look, the DCEU is not going to be anymore moving forward, and we're going to reboot the whole DC universe moving forward, and it'll be called DCEU. And around the end of January 2023, he released his first official video to announce his 10 projects which he'll be working on the first phase or the first early chapters of his new DCU. And the first chapter is called Gods and Monsters. Now what he said, which never been said before, that all of these projects which he'll be working on moving forward, they'll be all continue in one single story. It's not going to be just on movies and TV series, it's also going to apply on animation and also going to apply on games as well. This is something which hasn't been done by even Marvel before. However, this time around they're not trying to copy from Marvel's playbook, they're actually looking at Star Wars, and that's where things get really interesting. So he announces 10 projects. 5 of them would be feature films and 5 of them would be TV shows, which includes one animation as well. Just before we start talking about these projects, he also announced they're gonna do the Elseworld stories, just like the Batman, which Matt Reeves will continue to do his own thing but in an own separate universe. However, they'll be labeled as DC Elseworlds and they won't play into the main DCU. Now what I was surprised by James Gunn, what he announced on those 10 projects he'll be doing in the first early stages for his chapter of the DCU. If you look at the lineup, it actually makes sense. Each individual project is going to be different from each other, which even Marvel hasn't done that before, because Marvel has been trying to copy and paste the same sort of formula which has been working in the past. And I'm going to do a separate video which I'll talk about why Marvel should be worried about what's going to be happening with Marvel moving forward. So let's talk about the projects we'll be working on. Let's talk about the movies which is going to be featuring in the first early chapters. The first one is Superman Legacy, which is going to be a reboot of Superman. Obviously Henry Cavill is not coming back. He's going to be a brand new actor, and he's going to be a bit younger actor who's going to be playing a younger Superman. This is not going to be an origin tale, but it's going to be an early days where he's a Clark Kent in Daily Planet. And in this film we might have Brainiac as the main villain, we don't know. However, this Superman Legacy is going to be a different sort of feel to a Superman film, just like we seen in the comics. Then moving on to the next film he announced, which is called The Authority. I'm even surprised now that James Gunn is now exploring different characters from DC Universe. The Authority is actually from the Wildstorm comics from '99, which is now owned by DC Comics. Now these characters are like Justice League. They are superheroes who are trying to save the city and save the planet. However, they're trying to implement their own way of justice, just like the boys from Amazon series. I wouldn't say that extreme, however, when you read the comic you'll know what I'm talking about. Now moving on to the next project, which is actually my favorite. It's called The Brave and the Bold. This is based off the Silver Age comics from 1960 or 1980s, between that time, where it covers the adventures of Batman and the Robin. So this movie wouldn't just be focusing on Batman, but it'll actually introduce us to a Bat family, just like Nightwing, maybe Red Hood, all the other characters. Now the main Robin in the movie is going to be Damian Wayne, I think, which is one of my favorite Robins, I would say. So I am very excited for this film, and I'm very surprised that while we have the Batman running in the background, they're introducing us to a proper bit fantastical Batman. Then moving on to the next project, which is going to be Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is based on the comic run with the same name. So I haven't read it, but I've heard it's really good. Now the story is going to be that this Supergirl is going to be more jaded, just like Superman was from Man of Steel, because unlike Clark Kent, she's been raised at Krypton and she watched everyone die in front of her. And I think this movie is going to be really good, unlike the CW Supergirl, which let's not talk about it. And the last film he announced was Swamp Thing. I love Swamp Thing. I love the character. I think it'll be dealing with this horror superhero genre, which hasn't been done that before. Looking at the movies, I think this movie is going to feel different from each individual film. Now let's talk about the 5 DC TV shows which is going to be running along the movies. The first one is Creature Commander, which is going to be like Suicide Squad but more animation. However, the actors who's going to be voicing them, they're also going to play them on the live action movies or the TV series if they ever try to do them. And I think that's from James Gunn's own playbook. That's the sort of characters he loves to do. Look at Guardians of the Galaxy, look at the Suicide Squad. So I think that's going to be perfect. The next project is Waller, which is going to be on Amanda Waller. And it's going to be played by the same actor who played before Viola Davis. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. To be honest, we'll see how that turned out to be. I think it'll be more tie-in with Peacemaker. Then moving on to the next project, which is Booster Gold. There's a lot of fans out there for Booster Gold. I never read the comics. I don't know much about Booster Gold. I know this is a character from the future who come back in past with a future tech, and he pretended to be a superhero. It'll be more like a superhero wannabe, so we'll see how that turned out to be. I think it's going to be more comedy sort of superhero TV series. Then he announced my most favorite TV series, which I've been waiting for ages. It's called Lanterns, which is going to be based on Green Lanterns, and it's going to be more like a buddy cop TV series, which I cannot wait because I love Hal Jordan and I love Jon Stewart. And they'll be unraveling to a dark mystery which is going to play a big role in the future upcoming movies and TV series, so I cannot wait for that. And the last not least, Paradise Lost. It's going to be set in Themyscira, which is going to be the hometown for Wonder Woman, so either I think it'll be more like in the past. And this is going to be a DC version of Game of Thrones. Now, this is me recapping to what he announced, but that's not the point of me making this video. My video is as to why I think they'll be leading the superhero genre moving forward. The announcements he made, it's very clever and very creative. Now, you have 5 feature films, and each one of them, it's different from each other. Now you have your main big characters from DC Universe, which is going to be in the feature films, like Superman, Batman, Robin, Supergirl, even Swamp Thing. So I think they're dealing with these 5 major characters in their first 5 films, which is big. And these characters will be played by brand new actors, which we haven't seen them before. And at the same time, you got 5 DC TV shows, including animation, which are also dealing with not the major characters, but you have lanterns in there as well to keep it interesting. Now we only have a couple of films, and then after that the DC universe will start main major film which is going to reset the whole DC universe, and that's Flash. The people who saw the film, they said the movie is one of the best films DC has ever produced. I am really excited for it because Michael Keaton is coming back as a Batman, you're going to have Ben Affleck, and there's going to be other DC characters who's going to be in the film. So I cannot wait to watch it. And then we move on to Blue Beetle, which I cannot wait. I think Blue Beetle is going to be really good, but it's going to be its own thing because it's not connected to any DC content, which would only be left with one movie, and that's going to be Aquaman 2. And I don't think, based on what people been saying who watched the film, I don't know what James Gunn is going to do with that film. I don't think Jason Momoa is going to come back as Aquaman, and I think he'll be Lobo, which I think suits his character. And remember, James Gunn was going to be helping Kevin Feige to build this cosmic universe until Marvel decided to sack him or fire him back in 2018. And James Gunn is very creative. At the same time, don't underestimate Peter Safran, who is really good at what he does. Both co-leading this new DC universe, I think they have a proper plan, and this is going to make DC successful moving forward. Now, this is just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think they'll be taking over Marvel? I think they will be. So if you agree or disagree, then jump down in the comment section and let me know what you think. So make sure to come back on this channel again, because I'll be making a video about Marvel. As to why I think Marvel might be in trouble, we'll find out in that video. And thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure do subscribe and like to this channel so I can make more content for you guys. So until then, look after yourself. See you later.